For our topic this morning, we have divisions of literature with emphasis on elements and imagery in poetry. Okay. For our learning objectives, okay, at the end of the discussion, we will be able to explain what literature is and then differentiate the two major divisions of literature by giving examples, and then identify the basic elements of poetry, and then describe the different modern classification types of poetry. And then the last one, give the different literary devices used in poetry. Okay, so let us now start our discussion, our lecture discussion for this morning. Okay, now let us define literature etymologically. Okay, uh, the word literature, or what do you mean by etymology first? Etymology refers to the origin or derivation of a certain word. And so the word literature comes from or derived from the Latin term litera, which means letters or letter. Now, writers make use of letters in writing literary works. Now, literature has been defined differently by various writers. So I have here four definitions of literature. Now, first, that literature is an artistic representation of life in different forms of expressions. So, meaning to say, literature or literary works are creatively represented by the different authors and writers, which can be described as written and sometimes spoken materials. Okay, another one that literature is a preserved writings of a country or people. Okay, preserved writings, because these writings or literary works are handed down from one generation to another. Uh, so this has been maintained and kept alive up to this time. Okay, it is also the embodiment of nations' traditions, uh, customs, and cultures. Uh, because this is the collection of creative writings of a particular nation, of a particular group of people, culture, language, or period in history. And then the last definition we have here is that literature is a vehicle of experiences, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and attitudes about a given subject. That literature is where we can transport our experiences, our thoughts, feelings, and attitudes. Okay, now, what are the importance of literature? Why is literature important? What makes it significant? Number one, better appreciation of our literary heritage. Now, there is a recognition and we learn to appreciate our literary heritage. Okay? And it is also the transmitter of values. Okay? Now, events, as we read them in literature, make us look at ourselves and live through the experiences of the characters. Now, we glean from the stories the morals that lead to good life, like honesty, respect, love of country or patriotism, what else? Justice, honor, and others. Now, it is also a preserver of ideals, customs, and traditions. That literature is our link of the past. So this is our connection of the past. Now, um, we get a glimpse of our ancestors' way of life by reading their stories and poems. Now, reflecting on their practice, beliefs, and attitudes make us understand more deeply our roots, thereby inspiring us to strengthen our ideals, customs, and traditions at the present. Okay, now it is also the mirror of culture, that literature reflects the cultures of different races. Okay, now uh, those who do not have the resources to travel and personally observe the what do you call this, the observe the ways of people from other parts of the world may enrich their knowledge through literature. So knowing how people from other side of the planet live broadens our perception of life and humanity. Okay, and then also we have here literature as agent of change. Okay, now history bears record of significant changes uh, in society brought about by literature. So the choice of Tagalog, for example, as basis for Filipino, which is our national language, has been partially due to the popularity of writings in Tagalog, like Francisco Balagtas, Florante, at Laura. Now today, uh, literature in the mass media is a potent force swaying public opinion. So ideas delivered whether orally or in writing can greatly influence people's thinking. So they can make or unmake heroes and presidents. Okay. And then also, uh, uh, last but not the least, that literature is a source of pleasure. Okay. Now, like other forms of art, literature entertains and gives pleasure. So some people read literature for fun, while others read for wisdom they get from it. Okay, so these are the importance of literature. Now let's move on to the two major divisions of literature. Okay, now we have this prose and poetry. Okay, now prose consists of writings within the common flow of conversation in sentences and paragraphs. Meaning to say, prose is written in an ordinary form, making use of sentences and paragraphs. Now, it can be fiction or non-fiction. Now, fiction is, of course, based on imagination of the writers. So they are not true. They are not real. They are fiction. Okay? Another one that prose can be non-fiction, it is based on truth or real life situation. Or non-fiction are based on true to life story. Okay? And then the second division of literature is poetry. Now, poetry refers to those expressions in verse with rhyme, measure, lines, and stanza. So it is just the opposite of prose. Now, let's identify the different types of prose. Okay, what are the different types of prose? So we have short story. Now, short story is a brief form of fiction dealing with simple and single plot that makes it short. Okay, simple and single plot. Okay, the examples of a short story or maikling kwento in Tagalog are ang lumang tren sa purok mahinahon, si Julio at ang sapatero sa kanto, ang bahay na marmol sa gitna ng gubat. Now, these short stories were written by famous writers, Filipino writers. Okay, I gave Tagalog examples because this we are talking here of Philippine literature. Okay, so we have another one, novel. Okay, I know you are familiar with novel or novels. It is an extensive prose divided into chapters. Okay, so it is a very detailed story as compared to short story. Now, example of novels are, of course, No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo, written by Dr. Jose Rizal. And also, Florante at Laura, written by Francisco Balagtas or Baltasar. And then we have another type of prose essay. It is an expository prose composition which explains an idea, a theory, or point of view. Now, example of essay is the indolence of the Filipino youth, written by Dr. Jose Rizal. And another one, before I forget, La Solidaridad, also written by Dr. Jose Rizal. Okay, the next one is legend. Legend is alamat. Okay, alamat is a story of origin. Okay, it is usually fiction. Okay, so the famous story of Piña is an example of legend. Why is it that pineapple has so many eyes? So what was the origin of that? And then the story of fish. Why fish has scales? So the legend of fish. Okay, and then we have fable, a brief story that tells a lesson or moral. Now, usually in fable, the characters are animals, but they are given human characteristics. For example, si Pagong at si Matching, ang langgam at ang tipaklong. Okay, so those are examples of fable. Okay, another one is plays or drama. Usually plays are story presented on stage with acts and scenes. It could be drama, literally drama, which makes us cry, and then comedy, okay, tragedy, or it can be epic, or it can be adventure, or it can also be horror, okay, depending upon the storyline. Now, another type of prose is news. It is a report of everyday events in society. So there are so many news around us nowadays. Okay. Now, biography and autobiography. Now, biography is a record of one's life written by other person. Okay. And then autobiography, on the other hand, is a record of one's life written by the person himself. That is why it is autobiography. Okay. And then diary. It is a personal account of important events in the writer's life, usually accomplished daily. Okay. So before, we usually write our daily accomplishment in a notebook or in a journal. So that serves as our diary. Okay, and then letter, it refers to actual written communication. It can be a love letter, or it could be a business letter. Okay, so depending upon the purpose of the letter. Okay, now those are the different kinds of prose. Okay, now let's move on to poetry. Now, we said a while ago that poetry consists of uh, what do you call this? Uh, Stanza, lines, what else? It has measurement, and it has beat. Okay. Now, what are the different kinds of poetry? So first, lyric poetry. Okay. What is a lyric poetry? Um, it is an expression of poets' personal feelings originally intended to be sung to the accompaniment of a lyre or any string instrument. That makes it lyric poetry. Okay, with the accompaniment of lyre or any string instrument. Okay, so what are the different forms of lyric poetry? We have folk songs or awiting bayan. Now, it is these are poems intended to be sung. So it can be recited, it can also be sung. Okay? Now, sonnets is composed of 14 lines dealing with emotions and idea. Now, we have also elegy. Elegy is a mournful poem which expresses feelings of grief and melancholy, in which the theme is about death of someone. So in other words, elegy is a poem for the dead. Okay? Now we have ode. Okay? It is a poem of praise or glorifying an event or individual. And also we have here psalms or dalit. A sacred song or poem used in praising or worshiping God. Now, Psalms is one of the collection, or it is one of the biblical hymns collected in the book of Psalms, found in the Old Testament. Okay, Salmo. Okay, and then we have corridos, measures of 8 syllables. So when you say 8 syllables, it means octosyllabic and recited to a marital beat. When you say marital beat, it means it is just like marching. Okay? Example is Ibong Adarna. Okay? And then from lyric poetry, let's move on to narrative poetry. Okay? What is a narrative poetry? Okay? Now, narrative poetry is a poem, or these are poems that narrates a story or incident which usually follows a chronological order. When you say narrates, it tells, okay? It tells a story following a chronological order. When you say chronological order, it follows the uh, correct sequencing of events from first to last. Which events come first and last. Okay, so what are the different forms of narrative poetry? Ballad. It is a simple and short poem composed to be sung. Okay, and then epic or epico. It is a long narrative poem about heroes and gods. And then metrical romance. So when we hear the word romance, it is about a love story, okay, in verse, because we are talking here of poetry. So metrical romance is a love story in verse with the adventure of knights and lords and their ladies during the age of chivalry, okay, or chivalry age. Okay, then metrical tale, it is a poem about ordinary folks' origin. Okay, and then we have the last type of poetry, which is dramatic poetry. So it encompasses a highly emotional story that is written in verse and meant to be recited. This would include dramatic monologue and rhyme verse. So we all know that when you say drama or dramatic poetry, it encompasses a highly emotional story. Okay, it could be drama, literally drama, or it could be horror, or it could be um, what do you call this? Adventure. Okay, tragedy. Okay, so these are the different kinds of poetry. Again, we have lyric poetry, we have narrative poetry, and we have dramatic poetry. Okay, now still in poetry, because this is our focus. What are the basic elements of poetry? Okay, what are the elements? So we have here uh, six elements, six basic elements of poetry. Number one is speaker. There should be a speaker. Now, every poem has a speaker or a voice that talks to the reader. Now, in prose, the narrator is the speaker, but not necessarily the author. In poetry, the speaker is the poet, but it can be a fictional person, animal, or a thing. Okay, so that is the first element. Now, poetry has rhyme. What is a rhyme? It is the repetition of the same similar sounds occurs in two or more words, usually at the end of lines in poems or songs. Okay, so rhyme in a poem are the sounds of words at the end of the line, which should be in rhyme or the same or similar to each other. Okay, should be in rhyme. Okay, and then rhythm, it is a pattern of sound created by the arrangement of stressed and unstressed syllables in a line. So an example of rhythm is the rising and falling of someone's voice. Now, rhythm, in other words, it is the overall tempo or pace at which the form unfolds. Okay? And then poetry has also meter. It refers to the measured beat or patterns of beats established by stressed and unstressed syllables, which set the overall rhythm of a certain poem. And also, it has line. Okay? Line is a word or row of words that may or may not form a complete sentence. Okay? Line. Okay? Now, stanza is a group of lines forming a unit. Okay? So the stanzas in a poem are separated by a space. So usually we are asked, how many stanzas does a poem has? So it could be two stanzas, because stanza consists of group of lines. Okay, if it has five or more stanzas, then the poem is quite long already. Okay, quite long to memorize. Okay, so these are the basic elements of poetry. Okay. So let's move on to the modern classification types of poem. Okay, what are the modern classification types of a poem? So we have here acrostic poem. Okay, acrostic poem is a poem in which the first letter of each line, when read vertically, spells out a word which is actually the subject of the poem. Okay, now acrostic poem is actually uh, an acronym. It is like an acronym. Okay. For example, the poem is about COVID, which is very timely nowadays. Now, each letter of the word COVID should give its description that makes it acrostic. For example, C for contagious, uh, O for overstaying. Isn't it that uh, COVID is overstaying already? And then V virus, I infectious, and D disease, deadly disease. So that is COVID. Okay. Now you will describe it. Okay, in each of the letter. Okay, and then we have here shape poem. Shape poem happens when words are placed to make the shape of an object or ideas described. So, for example, so a poem about the stars would take the shape of a star. And then a poem about Christmas would take a shape of any Christmas symbol. Okay. Now we have here diamond poem. It is a 7-line diamond shaped poem that specifies part of speech in each line. So it is just like a shape poem. Uh, it is a diamond shaped poem. Now haiku, as we all know, it is a Japanese type of poem of 3 lines, each with a fixed number of syllables, mainly about nature and feelings. Okay, so these are the modern classification types of poem. Okay, now uh, uh, poets as well as the writers make use of devices in poetry. Okay, and these are imagery and figures of speech. Now, uh, what is imagery? It is the use of description that helps the reader imagine how something looks, sounds, feels, smells, or tastes. So most of the time, it refers to appearance. Now, in poetry, imagery is a vivid and vibrant form of description that appeals to the reader's senses and imagination. For example, the young bird's white feathered wing flutter as he made his way across nighttime sky. So there is a vivid and vibrant description about the bird here in our example. Okay. And then the old man took the handful of dust and sifted it through his fingers. Okay. So that is imagery. Now, the second device is figures of speech. It is also known as figurative language. Okay. So it is a deviation from the ordinary use of words in order to increase its effectiveness. Okay. Now, there are several examples or kinds of figures of speech, but I have chosen the most commonly used figures of speech. Okay, like simile. Okay, I know you are familiar with this simile. It is the comparison of two unlike objects or things using like, as, and so. Example, she is like a fairy. Okay? In this example, the beauty of a girl is being compared to the beauty of the fairy, making use of like. Okay? That makes it simile. She is like a fairy. Amanda is as brave as a lion. Now, Amanda and the lion are being compared for their bravery. Okay, using as. Okay, so as brave as a lion is a simile. And then Mrs. Velasco is crazy like a fox. Now, Mrs. Velasco is being compared to the fox for her craziness using like. So crazy like a fox is a simile. And so with the house is as clean as a whistle. Okay? So another example or another figure of speech is metaphor. Okay? So what is metaphor? It is the comparison of two unlike objects or things without using like, as, or so. So this is an implied comparison because we are not going to make use of like, as, and so. The snow is a white blanket. So there is a direct comparison between snow and white blanket. Her long hair was a flowing golden river. So the long hair of the girl is being compared to the flowing golden river. And so with the calm lake was a mirror. My mother's face is a star to me. And then kisses are the flowers of affection. Okay? Now, another figure of speech is personification. It is giving human qualities to an animal, object, or abstract idea. Example, the wind whispers softly to my ears. Now, in this example, we are giving the human quality of whispering to uh, an inanimate object, wind. And therefore, this is personification. Now, the tree sways on the top of the hill. So we are giving the human quality of swaying to the tree, and it is personification. Now, opportunity is knocking at her. Now, in this example, we are giving the human quality of knocking to the abstract idea opportunity. Okay? And then my alarm clock yells at me to get out of bed every morning. So we are giving the human quality of yelling to the alarm clock. That makes it personification. Okay? And then another, so that is personification. Another one is hyperbole. So hyperbole is a figure of speech that uses extreme exaggeration to make a point or show emphasis. So in here, we make use of extreme exaggeration. Okay? For example, I've told you 100 times how much I love you. So there is an exaggeration here of how many times you said I love you. Okay? I am hungry, I could eat a horse. So you are so hungry that you could eat a horse. And then he is as skinny as a toothpick. Her brain is the size of the pea. And I have a million things to do today. Okay. Do you know of a person who is hyperbolic? Meaning to say he usually exaggerate things. And then the next one is symbolism. From the word itself, symbol. It is the practice or art of using an object or word to represent an abstract idea. Okay. Now, an action, a person, a place, a word, or an object can all have symbolic meaning. A dove is a symbol of peace. Okay, maybe because of the white color of the dove. Okay, a mountain is a symbol of success. And then black is used to represent death or evil. And then roses stand for romance. And then a dog often stands for loyalty and devotion. Now, another one we have here, alliteration. It is a term to describe a literary device in which a series of words begin with the same consonant sound. So it is just like a tongue twister. Okay? For example, she sells seashells by the seashore. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. A good cook could cook as much cookies as a good cook who could cook cookies. Black bag beat a black bear. Okay? I saw a saw that could outsaw any other saw I ever saw. So that is alliteration. Okay? And then onomatopoeia, it is a word that actually looks like the sound it makes, and we can almost hear these sounds as we read. Okay, for example, the buzzing bee flew away. So, what is the sound made by the bee? Buzz, buzz. Okay, it is the word that actually looks like the sound it makes. Then the large dog say bow wow. What is the sound made by the dog? Bow wow. And then the snake slithered and hissed. So the snake hissed. Okay? So this is onomatopoeia. Okay? And then the last one, we have enjambment in poetry. In poetry, it is continuing a line after the line breaks. So whereas many poems end lines with the natural pause at the end of a phrase or with function as end stop lines. Now, enjambment ends a line in the middle of a phrase, allowing it to continue onto the next line as an enjambed line. Okay? Now, we have here example. Okay? We were running to find what had happened beyond the hills. Okay? So the sentence uh, uh, is not continuous. So there is a line break, okay, or pause, okay, that makes it an enjambed line, okay. The sun hovered above the horizon, suspended between night and day, okay. So this is enjambment in poetry, okay. So those are the commonly used devices in poetry. Okay. Now, so let us review or let us recap our uh, discussion. So we made mention on the different definitions and importance of literature. And then we also discussed the two major divisions of literature, which are the prose and poetry. Um, we also made mention about the elements of poetry, which are the reader, uh, or the speaker, the it should have rhyme, rhythm, meter, uh, line, and stanza. And also, we discussed what else? Modern classification types of poetry. We have acrostic, shape poem, diamond poem, and haiku. And also, we discussed the devices used in poetry, making use of imagery and figures of speech, which includes simile, metaphor, personification, um, uh, hyperbole, symbolism, what else? Alliteration, onomatopoeia, and enjambment in poetry. Okay, so that ends our discussion, lecture discussion this morning, our virtual class. Um, thank you for attending our virtual class, and keep safe, everyone, and God bless us all. Thank you.